The rain always came after the fire. That's what my mother used to say. I remember standing in the ruins of our cottage, smoke curling into the bruised sky, the scent of burned pine and blood clawing at my throat. The village below the ridge was quiet now, too quiet. Only the crows spoke anymore, and even they sounded afraid. I was 9 years old when the fire took everything. My name is Eren Vale, and I've been running from monsters ever since. Except tonight, I wasn't running. I was hunting one. They said the Alpha King had returned, after 5 years of silence, after the war of packs that left half the realm in ruins. They said he was a tyrant, a killer, a beast who could smell lies and tear hearts from chests without blinking. But I knew something no one else did. He wasn't just the monster in stories. He was the man who killed my mother, or so I thought. The forest around the mountain fortress breathed like a sleeping animal, fog rising from its ribs, wind whispering through its teeth. I crept through the wet underbrush, clutching a rusted dagger and a memory I couldn't let go. Every step was calculated, every breath stolen. The guards patrolled in pairs, torches flickering gold across the rain-slick armor. I could feel their wolves beneath their skins, restless, snarling, chained by discipline and fear. I wasn't afraid of them. Not anymore. For years I'd scavenged through ruins, stolen food, and slept in trees high enough that rogues couldn't reach me. Fear was a luxury I couldn't afford. Revenge was the only fire that still kept me warm. But as the gates of the Alpha King's keep came into view, my heart betrayed me. It didn't pound with hatred. It trembled with something I didn't understand. A whisper. A pull. Like something deep inside my blood recognized what waited beyond those gates. Lightning split the sky, and for a heartbeat, I saw him through the iron bars. The Alpha King. He stood on the balcony, cloak torn by the wind, hair dark as storm water. His face was carved from silence itself, sharp, merciless, and tired. Eyes that once burned gold now glowed faintly, dimmed like embers struggling against rain. He looked nothing like the monster in my memories. He looked broken, and for reasons I couldn't explain, I hated that. I gripped the dagger harder, my knuckles bone white. "You killed her," I whispered like a curse. "And you'll pay for it." The rain swallowed my words. The walls were high, but not high enough. I'd studied them for weeks from the forest ridge. The northern side, where the waterfall carved a narrow channel, was less guarded. Wolves didn't like the scent of deep water. That's where I climbed. Cold soaked through my clothes, teeth chattering, muscles trembling as I dragged myself up slick stone. When I reached the ledge, my fingers were raw, bleeding. Inside, the keep was half ruin, half throne. The war had left scars, charred halls, cracked pillars, faded banners still whispering the name of the house that once ruled these lands. House Draven. The name my mother had spat with her last breath. The Alpha's name. I moved like a shadow, slipping between rooms, hiding behind pillars, my dagger pressed to my chest. I could smell him now. Leather, steel, rain, and something wild beneath it. The scent made my head spin, like it reached for something inside me that didn't belong. I turned a corner and froze. He was there. The Alpha King stood in the great hall, alone. A dying fire painted his face in flickering light, His cloak lay discarded on the floor, his shirt half unbuttoned, revealing the faint lines of old scars that cut across his chest. For a moment, I couldn't move. He didn't look like a king. He looked like a man haunted by ghosts he couldn't bury. He must have sensed me. His head lifted and his eyes locked onto mine. Gold, bright, piercing. "Who are you?" he asked quietly. My voice caught, but I forced it out. "Someone you should have saved." He took a step closer, slow, cautious. "You shouldn't be here, boy. These halls aren't safe for orphans." The word hit me like a slap. "Orphan?" I hissed. "You made me one." He stopped. The muscles in his jaw tightened. "What did you say?" "My mother, Ayla Vale," I said, tears burning behind my eyes. "You burned our home. You killed her." The dagger trembled in my hand, but I kept it pointed at him. Something dark flickered across his face. Pain, recognition, then disbelief. "Ayla," he whispered. "She's dead?" My heart thudded. "You killed her." "No," he said hoarsely, shaking his head. "No, I tried to protect her." Liar!" I lunged forward. The blade slashed across his arm. He didn't flinch. He just stared at me. Then, to my horror, he dropped to one knee. "If she's gone," he said, voice rough, "then I failed her. And if you're her son," his eyes searched mine, golden and wet, "then I owe you more than a king's life." The dagger slipped from my grip. I didn't understand. None of this made sense. Why would you say that?" I stammered. He didn't answer. Instead, he reached slowly into the pocket of his cloak and pulled out something small, a pendant, shaped like a crescent moon, broken clean through the middle. "I gave this to her," he said softly. "Before the war." My breath hitched. I reached instinctively for my neck, where a pendant half the same shape hung by a string, two halves of the same moon. The world spun. My knees buckled. He stared at my pendant, then at me, his eyes widening as realization dawned. "By the goddess!" The fire crackled between us. "You're coming with me," I said, my voice trembling but sure. "I need a father." The Alpha King froze. The color drained from his face, and for the first time in my life, I saw fear in the eyes of a man who feared nothing. Not of me, but of the truth that had just found him. The wind howled outside, and somewhere deep in the keep, a wolf cried, a long, mournful sound that seemed to echo in my bones. I didn't know what would happen next. I only knew the storm had finally broken, and nothing would ever be the same again. The storm raged until dawn, battering the fortress like it wanted to tear the roof away. Thunder rolled over the mountains, and lightning split the sky so often that it felt like the gods were taking turns striking the earth. Inside, I sat near the dying fire, shivering. My dagger lay on the floor where I had dropped it. Across from me, the Alpha King sat in silence, his arm still bleeding from where I'd cut him. The blood had soaked through the bandage, but he didn't seem to notice. His eyes were fixed on me, steady, searching, almost afraid. I didn't know what to say. I'd imagined this moment 100 times, dreamed of what I'd do when I finally found him. But now that he was right here, alive, human, not the monster I'd built in my mind, I felt lost. He spoke first. His voice was deep, raw, like gravel dragged across stone. "What do you know about your mother's death?" I looked away. Enough to hate you. He nodded slowly like he expected that answer. Then maybe it's time you heard the rest. He rose from his chair and I flinched. But instead of reaching for me, he walked to a tall cabinet by the wall and opened it. Inside were scrolls, torn maps, and an old leather-bound book that smelled like ash. He set it on the table between us. That night, he said, was the night the rogues came for me. They thought your mother was hiding me. I told her to run. She didn't, I muttered bitterly. No, he said softly. She stayed to protect something, I frowned. What? He looked at me, and in the glow of the fire, I saw something like grief flicker in his eyes. You! The word punched through me like a blade. What are you talking about? She was pregnant, he said. When I left for the war. My heart hammered. That's not true. You're lying. He took a step closer, kneeling to meet my eyes. Do you remember the mark on your wrist, Eren? I froze. The crescent-shaped birthmark that curved just below my pulse had always been there. My mother used to kiss it every night before I slept. It's the mark of Draven, he whispered. My mark, the room tilted. I felt sick. No, you can't be... I didn't know, he said, his voice breaking. Not until now. Before I could respond, a loud crash shattered the moment. The door burst open and 3 men stormed in, wolves by scent, blades drawn. Their eyes glowed silver in the dim light. Assassins, the Alpha hissed, pushing me behind him. They lunged, moving faster than any human could. He caught the first one mid-strike, twisted his wrist until bone cracked, and slammed him into the wall. The second swung from behind, but the Alpha spun and drove his elbow into the attacker's throat. The third charged straight for me. I ducked, but he was faster. His blade grazed my shoulder, and pain burned like fire. Before I could scream, the Alpha was there, ripping the man away from me and driving his claws through his chest. Blood splattered across the stone floor. The smell was heavy, metallic, choking. The Alpha turned to me, chest heaving, golden eyes wild. Are you hurt? I stared at him. The monster I'd hunted for years, now standing over me, covered in blood that wasn't mine. Protecting me. He looked at the wound on my shoulder and frowned. That cut's deep. It's nothing. Sit down, he ordered, voice sharp but not cruel. Let me see. I wanted to argue, but something in his tone made me obey. He tore a strip from his cloak and pressed it to the wound. His hands were steady, his touch careful. You shouldn't have been able to find me, he muttered. Not unless someone wanted you to, I blinked. What do you mean? Those assassins weren't rogues, he said darkly. They were trained. From inside the council. The council? He nodded. They don't want me to know the truth about what happened the night your mother died. And now that you're here, his gaze hardened. You've become their target too. A chill ran down my spine. Why would they want to kill me? Because, he said, if you live, the throne will never be theirs. The fire crackled again, and for a long time neither of us spoke. The storm outside was easing. The thunder drifted away like a heartbeat slowing down. I watched the Alpha clean the blood from his claws, his movements heavy, exhausted. I thought about what he'd said, about the mark, the pendant, the truth I'd never been told. If he was lying, he was the best liar I'd ever seen. But if he was telling the truth, then the man I'd sworn to hate was the father I'd spent my whole life searching for. Later, when the hall was quiet again, I couldn't sleep. I wandered to the balcony where he stood, staring out over the storm-drenched forest. "You should be resting," he said without turning. "I can't," I whispered. "Every time I close my eyes, I see her." He nodded slowly. "I see her too." For a moment, the silence between us wasn't sharp anymore. It was soft, aching. I hesitated, then asked, "If she loved you, why did you leave?" His jaw tightened. "Because I thought I was protecting her. The war changed everything. I became something she didn't recognize. Something I didn't either. And now?" He turned to me, his eyes tired but clear. "Now I'm trying to be what I should have been back then. A father." I didn't know how to answer. But when the wind blew and the clouds broke, I thought I saw her face in the moonlight, smiling, like she'd waited for this moment all along. That night, I stopped calling him the Alpha. For the first time, I called him Father, and somewhere deep in the mountains, the wolves howled, long and low, as if the whole kingdom had heard it too. Morning came like a ghost through broken clouds. The storm had passed, but the scent of blood still lingered in the air. I woke to the sound of steel clashing somewhere deep in the courtyard. For a moment I thought the assassins had returned, but when I looked out the narrow window, I saw him, the Alpha King, training. He moved like something out of a forgotten story, fluid, lethal, precise. His bare arms glistened with sweat as he swung a blade longer than my arm through the mist. Every movement carried the weight of years, of wars fought and survived, and for the first time, I didn't see a monster. I saw a man trying to remember who he was before the world turned him into something else. I found him later in the armory, sharpening his sword. He didn't look up when I entered. "You're awake," he said simply. "You killed 3 men last night," I said, "and you didn't even flinch." He set the blade down, the sound echoing like thunder in the quiet room. "I flinched," he said quietly, "just not where anyone could see." Something inside me shifted. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but the edges of my hate had started to crumble. "I want to learn," I said. He turned then, frowning. "Learn what?" "How to fight. Like you." He studied me for a long time, gold eyes narrowed. "You're still a child." "I survived the fire," I said. "I survived alone. I'm not a child anymore." A ghost of a smile touched his lips, sad, proud, and broken all at once. "Very well. But if I teach you, you obey me. No recklessness. No lies. Understood?" I nodded. Understood. The training began that same day. He taught me not just how to fight, but how to think like a wolf. "How many footsteps between here and the wall?" he'd ask. 32. "And how many heartbeats before an enemy reaches you?" 4. He moved faster than I could follow, but he made me learn his rhythm, the dance between instinct and patience. When I failed, he didn't shout. He just looked at me with the same calm weight my mother once had. It was strange. How quickly the silence between us began to feel less like distance and more like safety. But the more I learned, the more I noticed something else, something darker. Every night, he bled, not from wounds I could see, but from something deeper. I'd hear him in his chamber, whispering to the fire, his voice rough with names I didn't recognize. And sometimes, when he thought I was asleep, I'd feel the whole fortress tremble, as if something inside him was fighting to break free. One evening, as I practiced in the yard, a guard brought a sealed letter. The Alpha took it without a word, but his expression hardened as he read. "What is it?" I asked. "Council summons," he muttered. "They've called a trial." "For me? A trial? For what?" He looked up, his jaw tight. "For treason. For the death of your mother." The words froze me where I stood. "But that's not true. They need a scapegoat," he said bitterly. "The truth died with her. Unless," his gaze shifted to me, "unless we find proof." "What kind of proof?" He walked to a chest and pulled out a faded map. "Your mother's journal was lost in the fire, but I know where she kept copies of her letters. To me, to the council, even to the priestess of the old pack. If we find them, we find the truth." I felt my pulse quicken. "Then let's go." He hesitated. "It's dangerous. The place we must go. It's the ruins of the Vale. My home." We left that night. The journey was silent, except for the crunch of frost under our boots and the occasional echo of wolves in the distance. The forest looked smaller than I remembered, and yet heavier somehow, like it carried memories in its branches. When we reached the valley, the smell of ash hit me. It was all still there. The burned cottage, the collapsed roof, the blackened tree where my mother used to hang herbs to dry. I knelt by the ashes, my chest tightening. I remember her standing here. She used to sing when she cooked. The Alpha said nothing. He knelt beside me, his hand brushing against the charred ground. Then his fingers closed around something half buried in the dirt. A metal clasp. The corner of a journal. He brushed the soot away, and letters appeared, faded but still legible. "Ayla Vale, my mother's handwriting," he exhaled shakily. She hid it beneath the floorboards. He opened the journal carefully, and we began to read. "If I do not return, it means the council has chosen to silence me. Tell him, the Alpha, that the truth lies not in the war, but in the blood. His blood, and the boys, they will come for him. Protect him, no matter the cost." The words blurred as my vision swam. "She knew," I whispered. "She knew they would come." The Alpha's hand trembled. "She died protecting you from them." "Not me." Before I could speak, the wind shifted. A scent, metallic, sharp, and familiar. Wolves. He rose instantly, eyes flashing gold. "They've tracked us." I clutched the journal to my chest. "What do we do?" He drew his sword, voice low. "We fight, and this time we fight for her." The forest exploded in chaos. Figures burst from the trees. 5, maybe 6, cloaked and armed. The Alpha met them head-on, steel flashing. He moved with the fury of a storm, every strike fueled by rage and memory. I tried to stay hidden, but one of them spotted me and lunged. I dodged barely, and swung a broken branch across his face. He snarled, wolf eyes burning silver. Before he could strike again, the Alpha was there, his claws ripping through the attacker's chest. Blood sprayed across the snow. When the last body fell, silence returned. The Alpha dropped to one knee, breathing hard. "Are you hurt?" "No," I said, still shaking. He looked at me, and this time there was pride in his eyes. "You fought well." "I was scared," I admitted. "Courage isn't the absence of fear," he said. "It's fighting despite it." I held out the journal. "We have to finish what she started." He nodded slowly. "We will. But first you must understand something, Eren. What? He looked at me, his eyes glowing faintly in the dark. Your mother wasn't just human. Neither are you. The words hung in the cold air between us. And in that moment I felt it, a pulse deep inside my blood, wild and ancient. The sound of something waking, something that wasn't entirely human. Something that belonged to him. The night we left the ruins, the wind carried whispers. Not words, just the kind of sound that makes your skin crawl and your heart forget its rhythm. It wasn't the forest that frightened me anymore. It was the silence that came after. We didn't speak for a long time. The Alpha walked ahead, the firelight from his torch painting the trees in orange and shadow. I clutched my mother's journal to my chest like it was a heartbeat I couldn't lose again. The words wouldn't stop replaying in my mind. His blood. And the boys. They will come for him. I looked at my hands, at the faint shimmer beneath my skin where moonlight touched. It wasn't normal. I'd never noticed it before. But now it pulsed faintly, like something inside me was listening to the night. And I could swear the night was listening back. We reached the mountain pass before dawn. Mist curled over the cliffs, and the world below glowed silver with frost. The Alpha stopped suddenly. "We can't go to the capital yet," he said. "If they know you're alive—" "They already tried to kill us," I interrupted. "What difference does it make?" He turned, eyes flashing gold. "The difference between hunted and dead." I swallowed hard but said nothing. He was right. Still, something inside me burned to keep moving, to find answers, to end this. He must have seen the defiance in my face because his expression softened. "Come," he said quietly. "There's someone we can trust." By midday, we reached a hidden valley carved deep between the peaks. A faint smell of herbs and smoke filled the air. The Alpha knelt and brushed away some snow to reveal a narrow stone path. "This place is older than the crown," he murmured. "The priestess of the moon keeps her sanctuary here." I frowned. "The one my mother wrote to?" He nodded once. "She may know why your blood calls to the moon." The sanctuary was carved into the mountain itself, ancient and still, lit by dozens of candles that never seemed to burn down. Symbols were etched into every wall, wolves, moons, and runes that hummed softly when I passed. An old woman waited near the altar, her silver hair braided with white feathers. Her eyes were milky, but I could feel her gaze settle on me, as if she saw through flesh to something deeper. "So," she said, her voice like rustling leaves, "the boy lives." I stiffened. "You know me?" "I knew your mother," she replied. "And I felt your heartbeat the night she died. It echoed across the veil." The Alpha stepped forward. "Priestess, we need to understand what she meant. About the blood, about the boy's power." The woman smiled faintly, touching my wrist where the crescent mark glowed faintly under her fingers. "The mark of Draven runs through him, yes, but so does something older, something born of the moon's first blessing." "I don't understand," I said. "You will," she whispered, when the moon calls you by name. She poured water into a silver basin and handed me a small blade. A drop of blood, she said. No more. I hesitated, then did as she asked. The drop hit the water, and the room exploded in light. Visions flooded my mind. A woman standing before a burning gate, my mother. The Alpha kneeling beside her, swearing an oath to protect their child. And behind them, a circle of cloaked men holding blades, chanting words that tasted like betrayal. The image shattered. I stumbled back, gasping. What did you see? The Alpha demanded. I looked up at him, my voice shaking. It wasn't you who killed her. It was them, the council. His hands clenched. The air thickened, the wolf inside him stirring. They made me believe she died because of me. They feared what your union would create, the priestess said softly. A child born of alpha blood and moon blessing. The one who could unite both kinds. Both kinds? I asked. She nodded. Wolf and seer, blood and spirit. Your mother was chosen by the moon to balance the realm. Her gift passed to you. I shook my head. But I can't do anything. Not yet, she interrupted. But the power sleeps beneath your skin. And when the next full moon rises, it will wake. The Alpha's eyes met mine. There was pride there, but also fear. Because he knew what I did not. The council would never allow that to happen. That night, I couldn't sleep. The sanctuary hummed with quiet energy, the candles flickering even when there was no wind. I sat by the fire, reading the rest of my mother's journal. There were pages filled with sketches of wolves, moons, and strange runes. But at the very end, there was something else. A drawing of two figures standing beneath a silver eclipse. A man and a boy, holding hands. Below it, she'd written, "When the moon is whole again, the truth will set him free." I didn't know what it meant, but I knew one thing. My mother had died for something bigger than vengeance. And now, I had to live for it. Just before dawn, the Alpha found me awake. "She would be proud of you," he said quietly. I met his gaze. "We can't stay hidden forever." He nodded slowly. "No. Tomorrow we ride to the capital. We face them. Together." I stood, my chest tight but steady. "They'll come for us." "Let them," he said. "They've taken enough. This time, the wolves will remember who their king truly is." As the first light of morning touched the snow, I looked up at the fading moon. And for a heartbeat, I swore it looked back at me. And I felt it again. That strange pulse in my blood. A whisper not of fear, but of promise. The kind of promise that changes everything. The journey back to the capital felt longer than it should have. Not because of the distance, but because of the silence that rode with us. Every mile brought the fortress closer. The same fortress where assassins had once come for me. Where my father had been branded a traitor, and where my mother's death had been sealed by lies. Now, I was going back there with the truth pulsing beneath my skin. The wind was cold, cutting, and filled with the scent of change. Even the forest seemed to hold its breath. We rode through the night, stopping only once to rest by a frozen stream. The Alpha, my father, watched the moon rise over the ridge. Its light spilled over him, softening the edges of the man I thought I knew. "You're quiet," he said. "I'm thinking," I murmured. "About her, and what happens when we face them." He didn't answer right away. He just stared at the moonlight reflected in the water. "The truth doesn't always bring peace, Eren. Sometimes it brings war." "Then let them have their war," I said. "This time, they'll hear her side." He looked at me, pride flickering in his eyes, but also fear. "You sound like her," he said softly. "You even fight like her." That made my chest ache in a way I couldn't name. By dawn, the towers of the capital rose in the distance, tall black silhouettes against a bruised horizon. Guards lined the gate. When they saw him, they bowed, reluctantly, but their eyes flicked toward me, full of questions they didn't dare ask. The great hall looked different now, emptier, colder. The council banners hung like shadows on the walls. As we entered, murmurs swept through the crowd. "The traitor returns." "Who is the boy?" "Impossible. He was supposed to be dead." My heart pounded, but I didn't flinch. I walked beside the Alpha, the journal hidden under my cloak. At the far end of the hall sat the Council of Elders. 7 men draped in gold and silver, their faces carved into masks of calm authority. But I recognized the eyes of the one in the middle, Lord Varen, the man who had once been my mother's ally, the man I'd seen in my vision, standing behind the assassins. "Alpha Draven," he said smoothly. "We did not summon you to bring a child into sacred council. This child," the Alpha said coldly, "is your heir's heir. My blood, my son." Gasps rippled through the room. Varen's smile didn't fade, but I saw the flicker of unease in his eyes. "A bold claim," he said, "yet easily disproven." The Alpha stepped forward. "Then test him." Varen raised a hand. 2 guards moved toward me. I didn't move. I didn't even blink. My blood was already humming, thrumming beneath my skin like a warning drum. "Very well," Varen said. "Let them move." They led us to the center of the hall, where the ceiling opened to the sky. The full moon hung high, huge and white, its light pouring down like silver fire. "Bare your arm," Varen commanded. I did. The crescent mark on my wrist glowed faintly under the light. The council leaned forward. Whispers rose. "It's only a mark. Could be forged." But then the air shifted. A sound like thunder rolled through the hall, not from the sky, but from me. The glow spread from my wrist to my veins, climbing up my arm like living light. My heartbeat quickened, and the ground trembled. The moon answered. Gasps turned to screams as a silver aura erupted around me. The torches blew out, the shadows bent. Every wolf in the hall dropped to their knees, their instincts bowing before something older, something sacred. I didn't understand it, but the power moved through me like breath. I could feel their hearts, their lies, their fear. When I looked at Varen, he stumbled back. His facade cracked for the first time. "Impossible," he whispered. "You killed her," I said, my voice echoing with something that wasn't entirely mine. "You betrayed your alpha. You betrayed the moon." He drew his dagger, desperate. "You're an abomination." The alpha stepped between us in an instant, his claws flashing. The two collided in a blur of steel and fury. I saw the betrayal, the pain, the rage that years of silence had built. When it was over, Varen lay on the marble floor, blood pooling beneath him, his last breath a hiss of fear. The alpha stood over him, chest heaving, eyes glowing gold. He didn't look victorious. He looked free. The council chamber fell silent. The remaining elders stared at me. The child who had come back from ashes. The boy with the moon in his blood. The eldest among them finally spoke. "The prophecy," he whispered. "The heir of Moon and Fang." The alpha turned to me, his voice steady but quiet. "Your mother once told me the same words. That one day our child would unite what war had broken." I met his gaze. "Then let's finish what she started." Outside, the wolves howled, hundreds of them, all across the capital. It was a sound that shook the walls and the stars themselves. I looked up through the open roof, the moonlight still pulsing around me, and for the first time, I didn't feel like a lost boy anymore. I felt like what I was always meant to be, not the orphan, not the hunted, the heir, the son of the Alpha King. The night after the council fell silent, the capital felt different. It was too quiet, the kind of quiet that comes before something breaks. The wolves in the city streets no longer looked at me with suspicion. They bowed their heads when I passed, some out of respect, some out of fear. I didn't know which one I deserved. My father stood at the highest balcony of the fortress, looking out over the kingdom he had once ruled with blood. The moonlight wrapped around him like armor. "Peace doesn't come easy," he said without turning. "Even when truth wins, there are those who can't stand to see it." I stepped beside him. "You mean the council loyalists?" He nodded slowly. "They won't let the power shift. They'll come for you before they accept what you are." My hand went to my chest, where the faint pulse of moonlight still flickered beneath the skin. "Then let them come." He smiled faintly. "You have your mother's courage." I swallowed hard. "And your temper." That made him laugh. A real laugh, deep and raw, echoing through the stone hallways. I didn't realize until that moment that I'd never truly heard him laugh before. The attack came at dawn. The fortress gates exploded inward with a blast of silver fire. Rebels, wolves still loyal to Varen, poured through, howling, their eyes wild with rage. The Alpha King didn't hesitate. He drew his blade and roared, the sound shaking the mountain itself. His pack rallied behind him, steel meeting steel, claws raking across stone. I wanted to run forward, but his voice cut through the chaos. "Stay back, Eren." I froze, heart hammering. "I can help." "You're not ready." He turned and tore through 3 soldiers like a storm given flesh. But more were coming. The mark on my wrist began to burn. I could feel the moon's pull again, stronger this time, louder. The world slowed, sound folding inward until I could hear everything. The heartbeat of every wolf, the clash of every blade, the dying breath of the traitors who fell, the power wanted out. I pressed my hands against the cold marble and whispered, "Please, if you can hear me, show me how to save him." The air shifted. Light exploded around me, silver and blinding. The mark on my wrist split open, glowing brighter than the sun. My veins turned to rivers of light. Wolves fell back, blinded. Even my father stopped fighting. "Eren!" he shouted, but his voice sounded far away. The world twisted. The moon's power surged through me like a storm unchained. The light spread from my hands across the battlefield, wrapping around the fallen, the wounded, the dying. Where the light touched, pain faded, wounds sealed. The rebel wolves froze, their eyes clearing of madness, as if the moon itself had forgiven them. But power always has a cost. The walls cracked. The floor split. The magic inside me began to burn too hot, too fast. My knees gave out. I could hear my father shouting my name, feel his arms catch me before I hit the ground. His heartbeat thundered in my ear. "Stop," he said, his voice trembling. "You're killing yourself." "I can't," I gasped, the light still spilling from my chest. "It won't stop." He pressed his forehead to mine, his voice breaking. "Then let me share it." Before I could answer, he took my hands in his, and the light leapt into him. The force threw us both back. I screamed, reaching for him, but the glow had already begun to fade from me. It poured into him instead, flooding his veins, his eyes turning white like the moon itself. He stood tall, radiant, unstoppable. The rebels dropped to their knees. The sky itself seemed to bow, and then silence. When the light finally dimmed, he was still standing. But I knew what he'd done. He had taken the power to save me, and it had taken everything from him. I caught him as he fell. His breath was shallow, his pulse fading beneath my hands. "Don't," I whispered, shaking my head. "You can't leave me now. Not after all this." He smiled weakly, brushing my hair back. "You already have what you need, Eren. You've always had it." Tears blurred my vision. "I don't want a crown. I just wanted a father. And you have one," he said softly. "Always." The wind howled outside, not in mourning, but in honor. The pack howled with it, their voices rising to the heavens. And when the last breath left his body, the clouds parted. The moon shone brighter than it ever had before. Weeks passed. The kingdom began to heal. The loyalists swore new oaths. The wolves no longer fought each other. They called me the moon's heir, though I never wanted the title. I ruled from the same fortress where it had all begun. My mother's journal kept close beside the crown that still didn't feel like mine. Sometimes, at night, I'd climb the balcony where my father once stood. The wind would brush past, warm and familiar, and I'd swear I could still hear him. His voice. Quiet but proud. "You were never just my son. Eren, you were the storm she left behind, and the peace I could never make." That night, the moon hung low and full. Its light wrapped around the kingdom, gentle and whole. No war, no fear, just peace. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel alone. I looked up, whispered a promise to the stars, and smiled. "I kept your word, Mother. I found him, and I made him proud." You've been listening to the Alpha Love Stories, where fate, blood, and love collide under a moon that never forgets. If this story touched your heart, Like the video, subscribe to our channel, and share your thoughts below. We post daily alpha love stories, and we're chasing our next goal, 1,000 subscribers.